Hello BUS1111 students. In this video, I'm going to explain the instructions for Applied Activity 6. All of the instructions can be found in this spreadsheet, and you will also complete the assessment entirely within this spreadsheet. Please make sure that you hand this in before the due date that's indicated in the spreadsheet. This due date can vary based on term. The first thing that you're going to do is click within the data collection sheet. Step 1 is to collect data on your research topic. First, you're going to actually implement your questionnaire. You must use the method of sampling from Applied Activity 5. That's because Cambrian does follow the course-based research policy. So in order to do course-based research, you need to have handed in this research form that was approved by your professor in Applied Activity 5. On this research form, you indicated the population and what sampling method you would use in order to collect student responses. For example, I said I would ask any student that attends Cambrian College using a convenience sample. I'd go to the cafeteria and ask students to complete the questionnaire. In order to do this, I'd actually have to pick a day to go to the cafeteria, print off a copy of my poster to bring with me, and then I would get students to scan this QR code and fill in my questionnaire until I have 20 responses. So whatever method was approved by your professor on Applied Activity 5, you need to use that method to get at least 20 responses. Once you've done that and asked only Cambrian College students, that is the policy for the course. You can only ask Cambrian College students and you've collected at least 20 responses. Let me show you how to get that information from Microsoft Forms. So step 1 is you need to go to the Microsoft Forms website. All of your previous created forms and questionnaires will be here. Mine was on the smoke-free campus policy. I'm going to click there, and first you'll just see all of your questions once it loads. But what we want to do in this assignment is not to alter the questions, but to get the responses. So you're going to click on the Responses tab right next to the questions, and it will give you how many people in total responded to your questionnaire. You need at least 20. Once you have 20 responses, you're going to click Open in Excel. And I've downloaded the file. Once you've downloaded your completed file, I'll need you to copy over the 20 responses you selected. If you have more than 20 responses, you're allowed to use them, but you need at least 20. So 20 is the minimum. If you got more than 20, you can use that information. You don't need to include the start time or completion time as examples because we don't need that information. But I do want you to copy and paste all of the information for your questions. So for example, here's the questions I asked. Do you currently smoke as an example? And here's the answers. So I'm going to select the 20 responses, at least 20 of them, for all of my questions. So here's all of my questions. I'm going to copy this, then go back to Applied Activity 6, and just paste this information in. And that's step 1, that you implement the survey to get 20 responses, and then copy those 20 responses into the spreadsheet. You will need to start early enough to make sure you have time to ask 20 Cambrian College students or more using the sampling method that was approved by your professor on Applied Activity 5. Once you've finished this step and have your data, you can move on to the data analysis section. Different students will have different amount of variables. So on this assignment, you only need to choose 5 questions to focus on. Of the 5 questions, at least one has to have quantitative information, and one has to have qualitative information. The rest can be anything else of your choosing. So let me show you how you fill this in. So first, I'm going to choose a quantitative variable. If I go back to my spreadsheet, we did have age in years as our quantitative variable here. Somebody had written 21, so I'm just going to replace that with a value in order to correct that data point. And then I'll be able to perform some calculations for the age in years. So I've chosen age in years, and step 1 is you're going to identify the variable name. It's age. Step 2 is you need to identify the type of scale. So what that means is how did you ask the question on your original questionnaire? If I go back to my questionnaire and I look at my questions, age in years is all the way near the bottom, and it was just a text-based entry. So for the type of scale, you've got all the scales that we learned in class, and this one was a text-based entry response. For the level of measurement, you can select from nominal, ordinal, interval, or ratio. This quantitative variable is ratio level data. It is quantitative because it's a number, and age and time are technically continuous variables. Anything related to time is continuous. So step one is to fill in all of this information for a variable you've chosen. I chose age. Because age is quantitative, you're then going to compute these measures of center. So first is the mode. You're going to use your mode formula and then go back to the data collection, select all of your data, press enter. Then I'll do the same thing for the median. Use my formula, go to the data collection, select the values, press enter. Type in my formula for the mean. That's called average in Excel. Go to the data collection sheet, select the ages, press enter. Measures of spread, you'll do the same thing to use the correct formulas. Just make sure you're careful with the standard deviation and variance formulas to select the correct one. This is sample data, so make sure you're using the sample formulas. Once you have calculated all the measures of center and measures of spread, you're going to create an appropriate chart for your quantitative variable. For anything quantitative, we typically use histograms. So I'll go back to my data collection sheet where the data is stored. Go to my Insert tab, and I'm going to select a histogram. I'm then going to copy and paste that histogram into where it says Place Chart here. You will be marked on correct labels. So histogram for age in years. You'll also need to make sure that you add the appropriate axis titles. So this would be number of people or number of students, and this is their age in years. And then finally, you have to make a conclusion on all of your data. So my conclusion would be most students are between 18 to around 27 years old, because that's the tallest bar, with an average age of 22. There are very few older students that responded. So that's just a quick conclusion that can actually help me with some results in terms of smoking related to ages, that I only have a younger demographic typically responding. So that's the first variable done, that you fill in all of this information to capture what kind of information you've collected. If you have a quantitative variable, you actually perform the calculations indicated, and then you make a picture. But what if you have a qualitative variable? That can be anything like yes, no, or a category. So for me, do you currently smoke? That's a categorical variable. So for that, what you're going to do is first indicate the variable. Smoker is a quick short form for it. For the type of scale, it is simply yes, no. That's called dichotomous. For the level of measurement, yes, no variables are nominal. The order doesn't matter, they just name categories. For quantitative or qualitative, it's qualitative if it's just yes, no. And for discrete continuous, it's actually not applicable, so you'll fill in not applicable there. Then for any variable that is qualitative, instead of calculating measures of center or measures of spread, you'll need to create a pivot table. So I'll go back to my data collection methods, and I'm going to select the variable I chose. Are you currently a smoker? On the Insert tab, I'm going to press the pivot table button and see how the data variable I selected is highlighted. Then I'm going to place this pivot table in an existing worksheet, and once the location little insert line is flashing, I'm going to go back to my data analysis spreadsheet and just select a cell where I can put it and press OK. From there, for this variable, I'm going to put it both in the rows and in the values as we learned in class, and it counts up how many people said yes, they're currently a smoker, and how many people said no, they are not currently a smoker. Then, based on this pivot table, you will create an appropriate chart. For only 2 categories, you could choose to make a pie chart, or you could use a column chart. That's up to you, but anything more than 2 categories, remember that a pie chart is not the most appropriate. They're only really good for 2 categories at once. So for this, I can make an appropriate title, pie chart for smoking status. So like, are you currently a smoker or not? And my conclusion is most students at Cambrian do not smoke. As you can see, only one person said that they do smoke. So almost everybody that responded does not smoke. And that's all you have to do for qualitative information. Fill in the 5 key facts from variable name to discrete continuous, make a pivot table, and then make a chart based on that pivot table. You then have to repeat this 3 more times, but all of the other times are for a variable of your choice. It can be qualitative or quantitative. That's completely up to you. Remember, if you do a quantitative variable, you will need to copy this information. So what I mean by that is you'd have to copy out the format I used here, and you just paste it here so that you can calculate again the measures of center. If you chose a qualitative variable, all you'd need to do is insert your pivot table here. For every single variable you choose, you have to fill in the 5 facts. If it's quantitative, do the measures of center and spread. If it's qualitative, do the pivot table, make a chart, make a conclusion. You'll do the same for variable number 4 and variable number 5. Finally, if you scroll to the side, you'll be able to view how you are graded for the entire assessment. The grading criteria is over here. You get 0.5 marks for each of the 5 facts for every variable. That's filling in this. Each of them is worth half of a mark for every variable. You get 1 mark for the correct chart type for all 5 variables, 1 mark for correct labels for all 5 variables. Anytime you calculate statistics, they're worth 3 marks in total for 0.5 marks per statistic. Anytime you make a pivot table, it's worth 3 marks in total. And finally, the concluding statements are 5 marks in total, for a grand total of 42.5 marks. That is all of the requirements for applied activity number 6. You will need to include the data collected from your survey in the first sheet called data collection, and then analyze that in the second sheet. If you have any questions or concerns with this assessment, please contact your professor and we'll be happy to assist you. Thank you.